Okay, I am live. Well, happy to be here. YouTube's got some new stuff going on in their interface, which is gonna take me a minute to get used to. Uh, Nothing really to be uber alarmed about. Alarmed, alarmed. Let's see. I need to switch I actually have my window set up. I just need to switch over to it. So I will do that. Let's see. Is this the right one? It is the right one. All right. Okay. Hey, Mayor Trumpet, thanks so much. Okay. Let's see what's going on in the OSR server. I should diversify things, but we'll start with the OSR and we'll see where that takes us. And then, hey, Croco, and then we can go. We can go on from there. All right, I got the new. Yeah, I got it set to new. Let's hit refresh. As usual, folks have something. I'd much rather read stuff that you guys sent to me than just picking rando stuff off of Reddit, but it is what it is. First off, let's see. Soggy Bag asks, can you play OSR adventures with Mork Bourge? Can you play OSR? I mean, yeah. I mean, you can kind of play anything with anything. These are. I'll read this one because these are interesting questions, right? Because is the OSR in your heart or is it in your mind? Is it a state of mind? Is it a thing? I can play OSR adventures with 5th edition rules if I want to. I could play 5th edition modules with OSR rules if I want to. Just doing the conversion stuff, putting that stuff aside, obviously there's work involved depending on what you're doing, but I almost wonder, is it more of something where you're going, can I get the feeling associated with OSR play, I guess, with Morkborg rules? And I would say probably, because Morkborg rules are pretty dark, they're kind of OSR styling just in terms of being brief. They don't, you don't have tons of abilities and whatnot. Heck, the Dungeon Key, Jean-Luc, he did a whole series of adventures that were essentially kind of OSR style adventures in Morkborg. Chicago says can play anything with anything if determined enough. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, yeah, it's really, and even the termination, it's really that conversion work, right? Certainly, it'd probably be easier to play a 5e adventure with, say, old school rules because it's just easier to pull. I guess I would say like not degrade, basically simplify because you're just simplification. Because a lot of stuff in the D&D monster manual, everything works pretty easily. You can just kind of ignore anything lighter, heavier weight than you want. Whereas if you're going up to 5e, you probably feel like you needed to add a bunch of stuff onto monsters, which means you'd need to do more prep. Was the way I do it. Because if I'm running something like BX and most things have X amount of hit dice and maybe they attack 1, 2, 3 times, they have a breath weapon. You can almost really just reduce it down and say, what are the hit dice? And I can figure everything else out and make it kind of work. Whereas I think going up to 5e, I'd have a hard time just, on the fly, right? If I was playing BX on the fly and you're like, okay, I mean, you could probably have a good time running BX and just rolling dice randomly for the kind of hit dice of monsters you're getting. And then just mock up, just think about a minute, like, oh, this is 6 hit dice. Is it more than one creature? Is it how many, okay, it's 1 hit dice, 1 creature, 6 hit dice. Okay, maybe it's got like a bite, claw. If you're thinking it's kind of some kind of giant bear or something, bite, claw. And if it's a bear, that's kind of it. If it's some other kind of creature, maybe it's got a gaze attack. The HD tells you essentially what level of fighter it's going to be attacking at. So that's kind of already done. If you wanted to, you could do, which originally I think they did with breath weapons for dragons anyway. It was really based on your hit dice. So you could say, okay, they have 6 hit dice. So maybe let's say that they have a 3 hit die breath weapon. I mean, you can even call it a 6 hit die breath weapon, but let's just say that's how you want to do it. And you could even just come up with a couple of house rules in a few minutes for how you're feeling. Maybe I'll say, okay, you know what? If they have a breath weapon, we'll say it's like 2 minus their hit dice. So if it's their 6 hit dice, we'll say, okay, it's a 4 hit die breath weapon. Maybe also depending on how many attacks they have, you can come up with some math or not and just say, yeah, we're just going to go six hit dice down the line for everything, whatever. And you can kind of go easy peasy, pretty much. Whereas if you're going into higher complexity, obviously that doesn't work so much. I don't feel like the Mork Borg rules are that different from the OSR where you can't kind of run with it. A lot of the stuff mechanically, I think, obviously you're using the characters from Mork Borg, so it's really more about, well, how are the monsters and stuff. But then you're also, I think, Mork Borg has all the player-facing roles, so a lot of that's kind of taken care of for you, and you really just gotta. It's really maybe more the conversion to hit points, I guess, for whatever Mork Borg does. Let's see. Meyer Trump says, does the OSR exist? Is Traveler, Call of Cthulhu, or Tunnels and Trolls OSR? I would consider them, yes. I mean, yeah, that is, Crocker says, a question for the ages. Yeah, there's no answer, unfortunately. OSR is literally this ever-fluctuating state of mind. It's really almost more of a marketing term now. Some of the more, I don't want to call them purists, because who's to say? There's this whole idea, what is the OSR, right? Is it like the Renaissance? So you might say about the Renaissance that, well, like the OSR would be like the OSR would be looking at the Renaissance and saying, like, only Greek and Roman stuff can be considered part of the Renaissance because that's where they started their inspiration, was looking back in Greek and Roman stuff. But when you actually look at the history of the Renaissance and all this stuff coming in, yeah, a lot of it did begin with Greek and Roman stuff, but it also brought, being able to get access to stuff from the Muslim world that had been, not been able to be to get integrated because of religious stuff, and there's other things, and then of course new things coming up. So it's kind of like, well, where do you draw the lines? Like, this is the OSR, and you get some types are like, no, if it's not descended from 1980s D&D, it is not OSR because that's how the OSR began. It's like, yeah, it did, but it's like that was 20 years. I mean, literally, the OSR is at this point 20 years old plus. So it might even be time to say that it's over and done with anyway, if it is kind of a moment in time piece. But if it is kind of a feeling piece, then I guess these things that evoke certain feelings. And I would certainly say that Tunnels and Trolls and Traveler and Classic Call of Cthulhu, that you could probably find pieces of things. This is where you get into, and I've used the example before, so apologies if you've heard it before, but it was French critics who dubbed film noir film noir. It wasn't the individual people making the movies. They weren't aware of it at the time. I think the term came up maybe in the 60s, looking back at a period of film, certain films from, and the dates can, I think, shift around a little bit, say 1945 to 1955, or maybe it's 48 to 50, basically a 10-year period, and not all movies, of course, but French cinemaphiles, the people writing French cinema, I don't even know if it's really critics, because they weren't, not a movie critic like Roger Ebert in that sense, but a movie critic is someone analyzing films. They started looking at these films and they realized that oh my gosh, there are these similarities with these films, that you could look at them, and as you're looking back at them, you can say, oh, there's all these things. They're kind of doing similar things for similar reasons, sometimes different reasons, but they all come in post-war. Okay, what is that post-war? How does that feeling post-war, and how is that coming through in their films? What kind of themes, what kind of techniques they're using? Some of it just had to do with the fact that they didn't have a lot of money. A lot of times these were B movies. I mean, there were some big ones that were not, but a lot of them, your mainstay film noir movies, they were kind of B movies. They were shot in a particular way, just to help with how can we stretch our meager budgets, all this stuff. Hey, gamers aren't games. So they look back at all this stuff and say, aha, that's film noir. So I think if you want to look at the OSR in a sense, in a certain lens, or maybe we probably shouldn't even call it OSR at that point, but looking back at a whole bunch of games, saying, what do they have in common, say, from the late 70s? Maybe we do another 10 years. I mean, it could be kind of interesting for someone to really do that on a serious level. Say, let's look at, say, 1979 or 78, whenever, say, the Monster Manual comes out, the first piece of first edition comes out. And then maybe we pick if there's a matching date, maybe second edition coming out. So pre-second edition, then first edition, second edition, but not just TSR, D&D, but what are all those different games that are coming out around this time? And you can push it back a year plus minus, whatever. Find a beginning point, find an end point. And then just look at all these different games that were coming out and see if they have any kind of commonalities that you could group together. And I bet you probably find some. I'm sure you can find some in Tunnels, Trolls, and Traveler, and Classic D&D. Right? It would be kind of neat. But of course, nobody's really done that, and nobody cares. People just it ends up being either that kind of gatekeepery thing with the you can't talk about this here. This is the war room. Or, where everything and their cousin is OSR because they think they'll get more eyeballs on it that way. Croco says anyone who thinks it applies can apply. Yeah, right. And people have taken stuff from it. I don't even know what to do with it as a term anymore. I don't know. It doesn't really matter either. That's the other thing. Is this stuff doesn't matter. But we people have built so much apparatus around the label that the label becomes important when the label was not the important thing. The label is not the most important thing, but it becomes that because people built so much around it, which kind of stinks. All right, so back to this original bit about Mork Borg. Could you play any classic OSR or current OSE adventures using Mork Borg or Mork manual rules? I'm not familiar with the Mork manual. What changes would need to be made? Hit points, damage, and hit bonuses seem close, but I need adjustment. Haven't played Mork Borg yet, but thought about running a game. I'm not a fan of the official adventures. Thought it might be more fun with an OSR adventure. I always find these kind of weird. Mr. Rourke said Tunnel Controls was considered OSR. Okay. I always find these kind of weird. Like, these people are like, tell me about this thing. I have a question about something I haven't run yet. I'm not sure I will want it, but still I have this question. I mean, yeah, you can. I did a Mork Borg to OSE conversion, and yeah, a lot of it, yeah, you're kind of tweaking the hit points a bit, but it's not a big deal either way. I think you just you're kind of using, you kind of think about we're taking an old school adventure, right? Oh, okay. So you're taking an old school adventure, presumably, or an OSE adventure, and you're running with Mork Borg. So what are the really important things of the adventure? So you have your stat blocks, which you'll have to swap. You can either swap out or convert or do some combination. And like I said, having gone through and converted going the other way from Mork Borg to OSE, it's not that onerous to do it. Not to say that I did the most amazing job in the universe, but you can definitely get it to a point where you kind of squint and it seems okay pretty quickly. It's not that hard. And I think if you were caught out at a moment and you're somewhere like, hey, let's play Mork Borg, and all you had was Keep on the Borderlands and the Mork Borg or Mork manual rules, you certainly could I think you could adjust it up or down pretty fast. Get it to a workable spot. And then everything else is just going to use Mork Borg mechanics. So you have Keep on the Borderlands. So, okay, you have the stat blocks is really the only thing, because everything else you're just going to use Mork Borg rules. And then if you need to know how many feet away, you're in the Caves of Chaos and I don't know, you want to know how far away it is. Well, you've got your grid maps. You can look. So it almost seems like, well, what exactly is the big deal there, right? Like I said, if you're going to something to 5th edition, which adds a lot more complexity and other things, then you may need to do a lot more. But a lot of it is it's just really just you're tweaking a few things up or down, and then you're using whichever rules came with the book. Now, because things have different rules and a different emphasize, and these rules emphasize different things, not everything may run the same way. Maybe something like Keep on the Borderlands or say Isle of Dread might be more or less satisfying run in Mork Borg with Mork Borg assumptions and Mork Borg mechanics, just because maybe those mechanics don't care about certain things that those modules may have built-in assumptions that, hey, you care about, let's say, encumbrance. And now, but the rules you're doing don't. So then some things that they thought would be challenging because you're dealing with encumbrance are no longer challenging, and that can be, an issue, right? But those are more kind of edge case stuff. Okay, so that was Soggy Bag. Thanks, user Soggy Bag. Bookmark Dungeon, Shady Bastion. That's kind of cool. How to create a system of point distribution. I don't know. No thanks. Okay, more ads. The Goblin Swing. That's cute. All right, this might be, I don't have an answer for this, but I'm kind of curious about it. So someone named Tramujaz wants to know about games that handle dungeon crawls using abstract movement. Like in Mouse Ritter, there's no movement measured in feet in dungeons. Turns count only when you perform one major action. I'm talking about movement where you go from one room to another or down corridors without using movement in feet or grid. Something like you can move up to the next important thing, and dealing with that counts as a turn. Someone mentioned Tales of Argosa. Tales of Argosa, I know Daniel showed it to me at one point. It seems pretty cool. It was a while back when I got to look at it. only in brief. I saw that someone's doing an actual play. No, a solo play. I mean, yes, a actual. I don't mean like a whole table. I mean, they're doing a solo play using Tales of Argosa mixed with Shadow Dark. That seems interesting. I might try to listen to a bit of that. I did listen to a little bit of it. I might try to listen to some more about that. But in the brief moment I listened to it, I didn't really get enough of this. But apparently in Tales of Argosa, you track general movement, searching, and actions outside of combat with the dungeon tally. When it hits 6, a dungeon event occurs. From a really well thought out list that is generic, interesting, and not always detrimental. What increases the tally is up to the GM, but I generally rule it as movement from one keyed area to another, searching a keyed area thoroughly, taking a breather or short rest, spending a lot of time squabbling, or planning. So that's not bad. I mean, I've thought about these kind of things. I mean, you could just have, if you wanted to, you could simplify your dungeons into kind of zones, and that moving between zones would tick over a turn. Doing something meaningful within a zone would tick over a turn. I mean, the main thing is you have the dungeon crawling is this, it's these gears. These gears are all tied in each other, and different gears tick over into other things. So you just need something. You just want something consistent that will tick those gears around, and it's also somewhat knowable by the players in that they understand that there is these gears ticking, and more or less what constitutes a ticking of the gear. Outside of that, or as long as whatever you're doing does that, and just in terms of if you're running dungeon crawls in the kind of classic sense, then however you want to do the ticking of the gears is great. If you find that the 120 feet kind of thing is unwieldy, and you don't want to count the feet, maybe you're drawing your dungeons abstractly or using mind maps, and you don't really care about that, then sure, go ahead and just say it. This is a zone. This is a zone. Just zone it up, because it'll work. It'll pretty much all come out in the wash. I think the important things are you obviously don't want turns ticking too quickly or too slowly. And I think having them do a thing is a ticking of the clock, or the clock, or the whatever. I say clock. The gear, great. If you want it to be something else, great. Shadow Dark does like, hey, we're doing. No, they don't. Well, the timer for Shadow Dark, right, is on the light. It's not on encounters. I don't know, or I don't recall how Shadow Dark handles random encounters, or if they do. So whatever you're doing, however you want to set that, and this is just some Jamaica for the working man. However you want to handle what turns the gear is up to you. But I do think that kind of like we do a thing, and to me, the do a thing, tick the gear makes sense also, because it's pretty intuitive for the players. We're doing a thing, ticking clocks, keep saying clock, ticking the gear, so that we know the trade-off of, okay, if we do this, we're going to tick the gear. Now, I don't know if I'd always have it on a 6. You always get 6 things. That's kind of once an hour, which is fine. Classically, it's more like once every 20 minutes or once every 2 ticks, I think. You could have it be variable. It could be something that if you want to set for a zone, and this zone's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, for how many ticks you get. I think that's another way to do it. That's kind of fun because you can also have that be thematic. So if a place feels dangerous or feels like there's lots of people around or whatever, things going on, or you hear sounds, echoes of footsteps and calls and responses, but you don't see anybody, but it's there. And then like, oh, do we do this thing? Or if it feels really dead empty, that can be one. And of course you can play with that, because maybe if it's a area that's filled with undead, it's going to feel that dead empty, but it's not there because it's just undead and they're just hanging out. So you thought like you had all the time in the world, and nope, you don't, because, oh my gosh, there's stuff there. Let's see. Any other ones? Shadow Dark uses close. What is that? Oh, no, I think that's more distances. Crown and Skull says Grimcock, okay, says Crown and Skull abstracts dungeons to 2 D4 tables of threats and locations. Arrogant Dan talks about Ironsworn. Shuag mentions Mark of the Odd Games forego moon rules altogether since they employ a point crawl dungeon. Yeah, it works fine. I mean, oftentimes it's really, you don't lose a ton anyway you slice and dice it. Croco says, encounter chance is fun to play around with depending on where the players are. Yeah, I wouldn't, yes, I think I would like to have that as a variable. I wouldn't want it to always be 6. Now, you can do that a couple of ways. You could have it always be 6, but in certain, 2 ways to do this, right? Let's say you say, I always want to have it on 6 to be simple to remember for me. Maybe you have in certain areas, you're ticking up multiple ticks at a time. So if in a very quiet area, it's 1 tick per action. You go somewhere else, it's 2 ticks per action. Somewhere else, it's 3 ticks per action. You can play around, and it doesn't even have to start with 6. You could start with 8 or 10 or 12, and have all these things just as multipliers almost to how many ticks you're doing. Oh my gosh, you've made a lot of noise, and now for the next hour, everything's going to be 2 or 3 ticks. Plenty of ways to skin the cat, but yeah, I would like that to be variable because you can use that. But I also understand there is an appeal to the simple, right? Like, hey, it's like the real time timers and like usage dice and everything. Like, can I just make it simple? I get the simple. I feel like you could just use a die to kind of tick it up. You do have to remember it, but so I think that for me is simple enough. But whatever. As long the main thing is if whatever you get to, the big consideration is whatever system you're using for this stuff, does it encourage you to use the system? Because that's really the important thing. The important thing is to engage with the system, because I do think it's additive to the experience. So the thing you really want is a system that you'll be able to use, because you can have something that you think philosophically, oh, I love this because philosophically blah, 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 blah. But then if you're actually on a practical level, you get to the table and you never use it, then it doesn't matter. It's a philosophy fail. What you're going to want to do is find something that obviously you could live with philosophically, but that is however you need it to be on a practical level that you'll actually use it. Let's see. Croco says they did that for an adventure they made for the Jam. Oh yeah, their Game Jam game. For what was that? Forget the name of the Game Jam. It was that one. Fang, right? Something Fang something. You varied the chance and time between encounter rolls. Also having no encounters in some areas until certain stuff happens. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, because you can also have that. Like, oh yeah, it's quiet until you pull this lever, and then all of a sudden all heck breaks loose. Okay, Glaive, apparently, which I don't know. I've heard of it, but I don't know offhand what it is. Okay, so we got some Ironsworn Delve. Again. Okay. And here's, of course, user Primarch of Istanbul having to crap post into here. Well, you can play any game like the way you describe, but it takes away from key aspects, marching order, positioning, time as a resource, etc. All are essential to OSR. Your style turns it into a series of scenes. You might as well play any other game at that point. No need to limit yourself to NSR. If I recall correctly, you could do that with Play by the Apocalypse or Powered by the Apocalypse and similar games, or even any skirmish war game, basically in narrative mode. With no unimportant things in between, you're robbing the players off of empty places where they can hide, retreat, camp, ambush, etc. One important thing after another becomes a theme park game quite soon. I mean, this guy is just a whole bunch of dumb. Hey, thanks, Mayor Trumpet. All wrapped up into one thing. What does using abstract movement have to do with half the stuff that they're talking about? Time as a resource, you're keeping time as a resource. It has nothing to do with your marching order or positioning. Like, what are you talking about, Primarch of Istanbul, my man? None of this stuff makes any sense. Again, it's like, this is what annoys me about like we were, just mentioning, like, what is the OSRs? Of course, Clemens got to come in and say, oh, if you do this thing, blah, 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 then it's no longer OSR. I mean, come on, man. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're playing at a level of abstraction. Doesn't mean that all this stuff's taken away. You can still have a random encounter anywhere. Any kind of random encounter is going to make positioning important. It's going to make marching order important. It's just, it's just, you're just crapping into this thread. Probably only half read what the person was actually asking and decided like this and having to hit that, like, let me talk about why this is an OSR kind of thing. It's just move on. Like, why even post the comment? Yes, my airdrop says typical Reddit comment. Pretty much. I mean, the thing is, but the thing is that it's annoying is you have all these people who are engaging honestly, right, with the premise of the question. And then you got to have that one person comes in, can't read the room enough to know that, they're not, that this is not what this is about. And then they got to come in and do it. It's aggravating. Stuff that drives me nuts. Okay. All right. Reinterpreting Tomb of the Serpent Kings in 2.5D. That's cool. Okay. 3 to 6 down the line. Excellent. Okay. Here we go. Moving away from monsters and ranged attacks. Okay. Well, Beardy Ben's got his. Oh, Beardy Ben retracted his message. Why, Beardy Ben? You have a very strict reading of the OSR, which is fine. As long as you're not hammering different Reddit threads and anywhere you can go to post that whatever's not the OSR, you're fine to think of it however you'd like. Okay. Let's look at moving away. Moving away from monsters and range attacks. Posted by user DJ Guacamole. Guacamole, maybe? Okay, so I'm trying to, this is in the reading as the comment now. I'm trying to clarify a couple of rather unspecified rules in Swords and Wizardry concerning combat distances and range attacks. I'm using the order of battle outlined on page 35. Okay, we don't have the books, that doesn't help. Surprise. Okay, so basically the order is surprise, declare spells, initiative, movement, and missile phase for both sides, melee and spells for both sides, and then you're done. Let's say the PCs encounter enemies at a certain distance. They are outnumbered. Both the party and the monsters have the same movement speed. The distance between them cannot be bridged in a single turn. Okay, first, it is technically possible to just keep on moving away from the monsters as long as the monsters don't have the initiative for 2 consecutive rounds, keeping the distance while peppering them with arrows. I believe this is true, which is a fine, technique, assuming you have line of sight and all that. It's not clear if you can move and fire in the same phase. Can you move can you fire and or move in any order? I believe I don't know. So Swords and Wizardry. Oh, Beardy Ben's this. They're saying that's what people say. Yes. I got you, Beardy Ben. I got you. It's funny because this, so I can't tell you about Swords and Wizardry, but this actually came up. So last night I was playing in Daniel, aka Bandits Keeps, OD&D chainmail game. Okay. And we actually had this legitimately come up. And actually, the encounter. So we had to split the party. We didn't have to, but we did. There were only 3 of us playing last night, and we're being harassed by werewolves. Take it easy, Beardy Man. Thanks for coming out for a sec. We're being harassed by werewolves. We're trying to. There's a lot going on. We sort of have founded a village. During one of the game sessions that I was absent, we founded a village. The group has, and our village we left to go do something. We come back, and the village is being harassed by these werewolves. Werewolves are actually pretty nasty. Okay, in OD&D because they're heroes. So they have 4 hit dice. They're heroes, which means you're fighting them on the fantasy combat table. Now, his game is not running straight chainmail. It's not one roll and then you die or not. But you're doing essentially you're rolling on that 2d6 table, and I think you do your hit dice worth of damage. And that damage, I believe, does it stay or no? It might be. I can't remember. So now I'm getting confused. Whether the damage stays from round to round. In any case, we essentially, I think with the werewolves, regardless of how it works for us, the werewolves they have to take 4 hits in one round. Only silver weapons if you're not a hero type. So this is something interesting, and I don't know if this is in the original rules or in chainmail or just how Daniel does it. The werewolves in this game, if you are a non-hero type, so say you're just a normal peasant, you have to use a silvered weapon, not a magic weapon. Magic weapons don't cut it. It's not even, I have a magic weapon, so I'm good. Nope. You are no good. Croco says it doesn't stay. Well, see, this is where I got to remember, because I maybe Croco, I don't know if you've read Daniel's rules, but like in chainmail, when you roll that fantasy combat, it's an all or nothing deal. It's like you roll against the dragon. If you roll and you beat the dragon, you just kill it. In his rules, we're doing our hit dice amount of damage on the fantasy combat table, but I just don't remember offhand because I've been absent a few games just because like the holidays and things has been kind of spread of games. I can't remember if they stay or don't stay from round to round. And he may have changed it back and forth. I don't remember. I'm a bad player. I don't remember. In our case, I think regardless of how it is for us, like I said, the Wolves you have to do 4 hits in a round. Oh yeah, the play test. Yeah. Well, you don't need. It's not a big deal, Croco. I mean, you're welcome to read it. And like I said, he often is using rule tweaks that he hasn't released in any playtest. But yeah, you can read it. It's not really important for this though. And so what I was saying is, so werewolves, silvered weapons, not made of silver. You coat it in some kind of silver. Now in OD&D, the only things you can coat in silver like that are missiles. Reverend says in standard chainmail, all damage has to be done simultaneously in a turn to defeat the opponent. Yeah, right. I know. His rules are not quite standard chainmail. That's what I'm not remembering what he has changed around because he's doing some things differently. So his rules are not exactly. It's not just chainmail by the book. So that's what I don't recall. Because if we were doing, like I said, we're doing chainmail by the book and we're on the fantasy combat round, it would be a single roll, but it's not. And it's not the troop combat either. It's just, like I said, I don't remember. So, but this is important, right? So you need silvered weapons. The only things you can get silvered are basically bolts and arrows. You can get silvered. So we had, or I should say we. So we split the party. So my character wasn't actually there. My paladin was holding down the fort at our village, but the other players had sent out a scouting party and found where these werewolves were hanging out. They found this werewolf camp. So then they came back. They got half of our force that's there, basically a fighting force. I can't remember how many. And they went to then attack the camp. So here's where we're bringing it full circle. Long story short, it was very important for us, this concept of firing missile weapons and movement, because we had that where the werewolves could move in on us, up to us. We could try to move back. Like if we had one initiative, we could try to move back and then fire. So at least in Bandit Keep's version of the rules, his mashup with his own stuff put in also, movement and missile are separate phases so that you can missile and move. You can kind of do this stuff. So actually it became pretty important because they were able to kind of come up, but they could come, I think, more than halfway, but not all the way. So we were able to get some shots, or the collective we, since my character wasn't actually there. Croco says, at least according to Daniel's playtest, all combatants in fantasy combat do a number of hits equal to their HD when they strike a blow, and need a cumulative number of hits equal to their HD in a single combat to be defeated. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if he changed that or not. Like I said, we're using kind of his up to the minute rules. And so there are definitely tweaks that are in this game that are not in any playtest that I'm aware of. So that's what I just don't recall. Because there are things like some of the he's been tweaking some spells and some other things, and some things are just different. So depending on when that version of the playtest rules you have, Croco, we could be several versions different. But it's like I said, thanks for looking up, but it's not a huge part of the story. It was really a part that just came up. So at least in that reckoning of the game, movement and missile, I know are different because we just played through it. But I don't know how Swords and Wizardry happens to do it if they decide to put them together for one reason or other. Okay, the third one, do you impose a penalty for firing when moving? I don't think it's really fire. So it's not really, to me, I don't look at it as you're kind of firing and moving. It's your move and then fire, you fire and then move. But no, I wouldn't put a penalty on it. And then, yeah, Croco says, yeah, I think it has been a while. Croco says, should be the latest, but I think it has been a while since an update. The latest playtest, yeah. And I know he's been tweaking a lot of stuff. He's been mucking around with lots of spells and doing a bunch of things. I mean, I don't really know that much about the spells. Hey, Twin Steel, I don't know too much about the spells because I'm not a spellcaster. But I know he's talked about it. He's mentioned it kind of. He's got some neat stuff he wants to do with some spells. So hopefully that will trickle out into the playtest soon once he's done enough play testing. I guess as our group, our group is in a sense play testing through stuff. But because some of that stuff I think he's I know he was. I guess I won't spoil it, but I know he's doing some different things with the spells. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. And then, okay, the last thing, let's say the monsters don't get initiative for 2 consecutive rounds. What's stopping the PCs from moving away, keeping distance, and peppering them with arrows? I mean, there's nothing to stop. I mean, the thing is, I feel like we get in these situations, people looking at a combat like you're in the combat and you're locked in. If the monsters, let's just flip it around. You're the players, you're hanging around, and some monster types, maybe they're horse archers, I don't know, centaurs, whatever. They're running, you spot them, they hit you with some arrow shot, and they run off backwards. And then maybe at first you're like, oh, okay, what's going on? Let's give chase. And you realize, oh, we can't catch them. And then they're like doing it again. They're doing they're really doing the Mongol. I mean, this is kind of, from my understanding, and maybe at a very simplistic level, this is essentially some of the Mongol tactics the tactics that the Mongols, like, Genghis Khan and those ones, that's the tactics that they used. And I think a lot of those kind of steppe military systems would use. They'd have they'd come up, they'd kind of harass you, and they run off, and they would try to get you to chase them, and you would end up getting out of good order, right, and positioning. You'd try to follow, you'd give chase, and then they'd turn around, and there might be more, they would turn around on you, and you take a beating. So it certainly is a valid tactic to do, but it takes 2 to tango. And if you just decide, or the monsters decide, we're not following those guys out there, they pepper you with arrows and they run off, and then you see them waiting however many yards away. You're like, okay, well, goodbye, and we run the other direction. Right? So yes, that if your opponents are dead set on just, it reminds me of that tactic that gets mentioned a lot, but it's sort of out of the MMO world. It's like, let's kite them around. Well, you can only kite them if they wish to be kited, and there's no, in those games, there's, the algorithm or whatever, the logic of the computer thing says, oh, if such a thing does this, then follow it and just keep following it. So that's why that works. It doesn't work because of any logic. It doesn't make any logical sense. Most living creatures with any sort of sentience aren't going to simply just get kited around the field. I mean, maybe if someone loses their mind, and they end up losing their temper and they're just seeing red, that'll work for a minute. But it's not going to, so I wouldn't worry about that stuff. That's something on paper you're like, oh yeah, but then you think about, well, why are they chasing you? Or why are you chasing them? Why are they doing this? Why are you running across this wide open field after them? Why? Get cover. Like, oh gosh, these centaurs, let's get some cover behind us. Let's figure some out. We've got some spells. Let's throw some spells. Why are we doing that? Oh, Croco mentions it might be related to the fire. Yeah, I mean, how many times you can fire? Yeah. I mean, there could be a bunch of things going on. But I mean, ultimately, I just think it's a tactic that only works if you ignore the fact that someone else is chasing you, or if you ignore the fact of asking the question of why are you just blindly chasing somebody down? And sometimes the answer is you shouldn't be. Now, in the case of the werewolves could move faster than us. So when the party hit them, they were kind of in human form, but they turned into werewolves and then ran. So when they turned into werewolves and ran after, we couldn't do this kiting strategy because they're faster than us. Now, again, I'm not there, and we left it on. And essentially where we left the combat, a little bit of a cliffhanger, was the werewolves were closing. We'd taken down a few, but there were still, I think, how many? I think there was 19 werewolves. We got 8 of them with the silvered arrows or bolts, I think, whatever it was. And plus the party members, because once you're a heroic type, you don't need the werewolf. So the player characters being hero types did not need the silver, but the normal folk, our normal troops, did. And then we got, I think we whittled them down to 8. No, sorry, whittled down to 11, killing 8. But now those 11 were closing in, and then I think one of the player characters, they're playing a wizard -1 technically, and they were about to try to cast confusion on the werewolves before the werewolves closed into melee. Now, when the werewolves get into melee, that's going to be dicey. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's going to be interesting. We were down a few people, and we kind of split the party because we weren't sure what the werewolves are doing, because I think there's like 24 werewolves. And we had, when they did the scouting edition, I think they'd spotted like 11 or some number, but not all of them. So we've been careful not to send everybody over to the village and then the werewolves come. I didn't want to do that, especially knowing that they're fast and everything. It's like, well, if we send everybody over to the village and then they're not there, and then we're kind of vulnerable, right? So I hung back, and then the other two players who were in attendance last night, they moved their characters over to do this attack thing. But I think, because now there's some question of, well, if we have a full house next week, there are at least 2 more characters that will be there. Who is there? So that's question number 1. Because it wouldn't be fair necessarily. I get it if it's like, oh, we're like doubled our strength, but they weren't there to make a choice. So I think maybe I don't know if Daniel's gonna have them roll dice or whether we'll pick 1 out of 2 could go. We'll see, but it's still going to be dicey because of that 4 hit die deal. The 4 hits in a round makes it tough. It basically means that once you're in melee, you can't fire missile weapons anymore. Our regular troops are just toast. However many they can kill in a round, they're going to kill. And then it's down to essentially how many can we take care of. Now, we're all at least 4 hit dice, so we can, in one round, take down at least one of them. Maybe more. Now, my character became recently 8th level superhero, so I can actually take down 2 werewolves in 1 hit. Because I'm doing 8 hit dice of damage, so that takes care of 2 werewolves. So if I'm lucky, they got to hit me twice to take me down. I can take out 2 of them with 1 shot, but I'm not there. But it seemed to be. I felt it was a good compromise. It's a dwarf and the wizard. The wizard got some spell making. The dwarf is pretty good in combat, and then that way, at least if they did attack the village, I'd have a chance to take some out. We'll see how it works. But anyway, we literally just had this move and range conversation, so the timing is excellent for that question. Fun time. Crocker says, need a specialized wolfsbane carry breed. Yes, we do have some wolfsbane. But we have like 3 bunches of wolfsbane. We have a ridiculously small amount of wolfsbane. So not a bunch. This werewolf thing really caught us off guard. I don't know where this whole thing is going. It's going to be interesting because these werewolves seem to just pop out of nowhere. And I don't know if it's a wandering creature check that Daniel has just turned into something, or whether there's something, whatever. We don't know. I mean, that's kind of the cool thing. That's the fun thing. It doesn't even matter, right? What generated this werewolf crisis? It doesn't matter, but they were from some other part. We're on these islands, or we're on an island. We're playing I think it's called is it called the Misty Isles? We're playing the Misty Isles which is, I guess, I never read it originally, but I think it's an early supplement. We're on the Isle of Wizards. And somewhere on the island, these werewolves came, and now they're causing issues. Okay, here's another BX kind of question. Okay, BX Disciple asks, I know in BX, if you want to evade, you have to do it before combat starts, but what about running away from combat after retreat? Is this allowed? Yeah, you can run away. I mean, they have rules for running away. I think it may be confusing evasion, which is generally what you're doing out in the wilderness, with running away, which you can do anywhere. And I know there's some pretty good rules. I don't know if BX has the full rules. The white box has some extra stuff but I think BX also calls out essentially line of sight. Going around, getting out of line of sight is pretty much going to stop pursuit. By the book. Obviously, play it however you want. If you have really smart enemies, you might say, no, they're not going to. Other creatures probably will stop, more or less. I don't know. I mean, one of the interesting things with these things is, like, we don't have good analogs in nature, really, for the most part, of how creatures react in dungeon-type spaces. You imagine you're on the Serengeti. There's no, like, getting out of line of sight, right? The gazelle is running and the lions are chasing, or the cheetah. there isn't, so there really isn't much for the gazelle to get behind and get out of. So I know we treat it, oh, it's so simplistic getting through line of sight, but I don't know if it is, because we don't really, how much data do we have about what would a cheetah do if a gazelle could round a corner and vanish from sight, literally vanish from sight? Does the cheetah just follow around the corner, or does it, like, I don't know, and for how long? So it seems like it's so simple, but also it's like, well, I don't know, animals, they don't really operate that. Like if I go around a corner, sometimes my cat will be curious, other times the cat goes somewhere else. I don't know. Uh, and yes, Reverence mentions dropping food and treasure. I like that. Like, right, you want to drop food if it's kind of an animal. If it's an intelligent creature, you want to drop loot. Those things will also work. Again, that one, probably the food, I think is fine. The treasure thing seems a little bit simple too, but you can kind of play it as it's the bribe, right? Look, just leave me alone. Because I imagine if it's like, did you ever play? I'm aging myself a little bit, but a Golden Axe. In Golden Axe, there are these little gnome creatures that will show up every once in a while. I think they might even steal from you, but they just start kind of running around the screen. And if you hit them or kick them, or just you hit them in some way, then they drop stuff. So what you end up doing is when one of those little critters hits the screen, you just start running around trying to kick the thing or hit it as many times as possible, because then it's dropping all this loot for you. And I imagine the same thing. If I'm chasing somebody and he drops a coin, I'm thinking, well, what happens when I chase him some more? I'd want to chase him until I'm not getting any returns left. It almost seems to be an encouragement. Like, look, excuse me, I had 2 coins. I dropped 2 coins. Now I'm dropping 3 coins. But yes, and as Croco mentions, yeah, you're supposed to declare. You're supposed to declare that you're getting out of dodge, basically. But I'm guessing that ultimately they're confusing evasion, which is when you're trying to avoid things in the wilderness, from running away, which is more or less, that's kind of how they split it up. Running away, dungeons, evading, wilderness. But evading is you're not in combat anymore, which is, I guess, is where his question comes up. And essentially, I would start doing the evasion once line of sight is broken, presuming that the things are trying to continue to chase you, which in the dungeon they're not, but in the wilderness, who knows? And you could probably, if you wanted to have an evasion rule for the dungeon, you probably could, though your options of where to go are limited. The thing is, part of why the rules work in the wilderness is because once you're kind of out of that line of sight, you're actually out of the encounter, the engagement, that part of the engagement's over. Any kind of terrain, like you could be anywhere. I mean, obviously they're gonna say, "Oh, you were running away from us that away," but you're over a hill, behind a rise. You've gone in some trees, and you could turn in a million different directions. So the evasion makes a bit more sense. In a dungeon, you got usually have a few corridors. So the long form evasion bit doesn't. You just don't. I don't think you really need it as much. It doesn't make as much sense in the dungeon as it does in the wilderness. Oh, Croco says drop a halfling. That's a food and treasure. That's a good point. All right, let me see here. Chthonic Musings says, when the gnome leaves the screen, disappears, seems like it worked for him. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But he has no treasure left, because that's when he runs. That's when he hits the hyper speed and runs away. He's got no more treasure. So I guess it's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory. Gets away, but it gets away broke, which is fine by me. I like Golden Axe. I like those kind of games. I hope they still make those. I got to look it up. I got to look up to see if they still make some of those kind of, what are they, side-scrolling beat-em-ups, kind of Double Dragon. But I really did like the fantasy ones. There was a few D&D themed ones. Those were fun. There were some ones based on kind of the Chinese Three Kingdoms era. I think there even is a Monkey King one. But I feel like they're all from the, I don't know, 90s, early aughts maybe. Hopefully they're still making them. All right. Ideas for mayhem at a village festival. Okay, updated UDT. I don't know what that is. Made a packet of the. Oh, this might. Well, is this here or is it somewhere else? So someone made some eight second edition classes and races for use with OSE. Well, we can look at the example. Though it's not high enough res. Oh, okay. Well, it's on. There's a drive. Okay, thank you. All right, wow. Okay, I'll link this in the chat because I know people are always looking for this kind of stuff. Let's see, 2E. This is for OSE. This is to the Reddit. Well, let's take a look. So, reference. It's adapted from 2nd edition. Okay. Class groups, classes since 2E were separated into warriors, rogues, priests, and wizards. All right. Oh, this is kind of cool. All right, so the spells. So they're pulling their spell list from the OSC Advanced Fantasy. Okay. Reactions. So we got all that. I don't remember. 2nd edition moved to a D20 reaction roll. What does AD&D use? I don't remember. Does AD&D use a D20, or are they still doing the 2D6? Can't remember. I'm assuming we're getting about the same curvature of results. Though interesting that. I don't I know, I just never get down. I can never 100% get down and roll under stuff. Oh, they're using 2D10. Oh, okay. Not okay. So it's got a okay. But the high end is hostile. I kind of like it with the friendly stuff's the high end. I don't know. I don't know why. I was gonna say sometimes I have a hard time getting behind sometimes the roll under stuff because I just like rolling high. I just like when high is good or low is bad, and that's just my own personal preference. Oh, Croco says AD&D has a D10 initiative. Okay. Oh, D10 reaction because they have D10 initiative. Oh, I wonder. I don't know. Do they have an initiative check here? I don't know. Okay. So I'm curious why they have this in here. So the nice addition here, and I'm assuming this is a 2nd edition thing, is it has different things depending on what the player characters are thinking. Now, you could probably just do this as a modifier, but essentially, if the players are friendly, then the monster reaction is friendly. So one thing with this is it's a little bit hard because you're rolling the reaction kind of in the moment they meet eyes with the player characters. So do the player characters have a chance to adopt a pose or stance, if you will, or attitude? But essentially, maybe you just roll it on the indifferent. I don't know. I don't know how I'm curious how I would want to use this. I suppose it could be just how if you're in a dungeon and you're marching order, you're in armor. I suppose you'd be threatening. I don't know. But in any case, you've got some columns here. It's nothing super crazy. All right, so you have the dwarf. I'm going to get more about the new stuff. Elf. We have gnomes. Let's see. Gnomes' natural constitution, resistance to magic, grants them a bonus to saving throws versus poison spells, and magic wands, rods, and staves. This bonus depends on the gnome's con score as follows. Okay, cool. Detect construction tricks. Krago says once for initial, and then again after the player's declared stance. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe something like that. I don't know if that seems too unwieldy, but maybe I want to do once for that initial one. That maybe it's just a 2d10 table. Maybe have one that doesn't even have this stuff on it. Just has like what it is, and then maybe you can see what kind of tone it takes. I'm not sure. It's an interesting thing to have, but it just seems like the way I use reactions is it's because it's that first kind of gut reaction that the players haven't had a chance to do anything to inspire it one way or another. I mean, I think that's kind of classically how it was, right? The party monsters meet monsters, see the party, you roll your reaction, and then that's kind of whatever. That's their gut response to the players is that. And then the party can do stuff to try to either take advantage of it if it's positive, or maybe try to mitigate it if it's negative or whatever. Krakow says Mensers also has something like that. I mean, it seems cool, but maybe I'm just so used to the 2d6 kind of roll that I'd have to see how I would want to use that. I mean, it's something you can also ask. The one thing that's interesting is you could set it up, like kind of like your marching order. How are you approaching? Are you approaching arms up, or are you approaching kind of white? Because you can. I mean, there's definitely you can have like, hey, we're coming down the hall and we've got weapons out and we're armed and we're in a defensive spot. We look like we're ready to charge in, or we're coming in and we've kind of got our hands. We're trying to take on a passive whatever, and either we're being defiant or we're trying to be conciliatory or we're trying to be friendly, whatever. So it might be something you just have to ask your party, how do you want to do this? But there'd have to be some other hook there, because there would be no reason not to always be showing friendly, because that gets you the best results. So there has to be something like, well, if you're showing friendly and you get attacked, your first round is spent arming yourself, something like that. I'd want there need to be some kind of price for these picks, so that in a dungeon environment, you may want to go in threatening, even though it's going to hurt your reaction, because then you're kind of at the ready. And if you go in hostile, maybe you'll even be like, you were super at the ready, but now you're taking a real backseat to, people are going to react to you hostilely as well. Interesting thing to think about. Okay, we got elves. So we already had our gnomes. Or we looked at gnomes, half elves. Anything interesting with half elves? No, not really. Right, Reverend says, if you are friendly, you're generally unprepared for ambushes. Yeah, that could be another thing, right? That could definitely be something like, hey, if you're going in friendly, then yeah, you are definitely going to there's a higher chance of being caught unawares. Like, whatever. Come up with whatever works for you. But I definitely would want to have something, because it's kind of cool. It's another way of just being able to turn some dials. Like, we want to be really ready for combat, but we understand people are going to be hostile. Or we really are trying to make friendly, so we're aware that we're making ourselves vulnerable in some way. Bards. Okay, so we have bards. Bards are members of a sect of minstrels and warrior poets associated with the druids. Like druids, bards worship the force of nature and the myriad deities that personify. Their strengths lie in their deep knowledge of myth and legend, the magic that they wield on behalf of their gods, and the enchanting power of their music. I played a bard in 2E, and I kind of liked it a lot. I had fun with it. Though I played it, I was probably I was back in school. I don't know that my party loved my bard, because my bard would I mean, he'd try to do support stuff, but he wasn't fighting out in combat. I remember there was one combo where I spent the combat up a tree. I mean, I was playing my instrument, but I was supporting, but I was like, I'm not getting down. I'm not a fighter. Bards can use leather armor, chainmail, anti-charm once per encounter. On a successful save versus spells, the bard may play a song, granting allies within 30 feet immunity to song-based magical effects. Okay. Bardic inspiration. Before combat, a bard may inspire his allies by spending 3 rounds performing. Crocker wants to know how much when I use anti-charm. I don't remember using it once. It is very specific. I might say, instead of song-based, I might just say sound-based, right? Something like that. Things with what's the component called that was it somatic? Some magical effects with the somatic. I don't know, that gets kind of complicated too. But there's a few things. Yeah, maybe harpies. I guess pixies might be one. I mean, there's some others, but yeah, it's kind of an edge. It's a little bit of an edge case. And Bardic inspiration, I hated. And the reason why I hated it is this first part here. It's so frustrating. Before combat, a bard may inspire his allies by spending 3 rounds performing. Okay, so here's what this means. This means that if I want to inspire you for the next thing, I have to have pre-known that this thing's going to come at least 3 rounds after I'm doing the performing, which means that in practical purposes, unless there's a set battle that we're all aware of, the chance that I'm getting 3 rounds to set up for it is next to nothing. I mean, and then, of course, because I'm singing like in a dungeon, am I going to start singing to do this or playing an instrument? Like, well, there goes any surprise, anything. Like, it just, to me, I hated it. Because I was just thinking, why can't I just play? And I mean, this is when I think that in the 5th edition one where you just do the thing and you get the thing is better. Because this is obnoxious. Spend 3 rounds. Like, how often are you getting 3 rounds in advance to know this thing's going to happen? And then you're going to blow You're going to blow half of the tactics the party can use so that you can do that. And it's look at the effects. +1 bonus to attack rolls, +1 bonus to saving throws, +2 bonus to morale checks. And yeah, it's a range of effect. It's a group effect, which is nice, but it doesn't really increase. It doesn't progress as your levels progress. So it's like, oh yeah, and if I'm 3rd level, I'm still giving this away. If I'm 5th level, I'm still just no good. All right, Krakow says the rest of the party has to distract the random encounter with negotiations. Yeah. It's just kind of I don't know why they made it specific like that, but it was just too specific. Too specific. But you did get to use some spells. So yeah, I think I bet you I think I cheated this too, where I would just start playing and I didn't tell the GM it had to be 3 rounds. I think that's how I was using it. Because it was obnoxious. Obnoxious. Influence by playing music and singing, the bard can influence all listeners. This ability does not function in combat. And then let's see, listeners who fail a save get the reaction shifted in one direction level. That's great. If the save passes, if the listeners pass a save, they go opposite. And this one scales. That's the word I was looking for. This one does scale a bit in terms of the saving throw getting harder for every 3 levels of the bard. Yeah, I think the thing is too is with this one, it's called influence, but it feels like it's pretty ham-fisted. Because if you pass the save, to me, when you say that if you pass your save as a listener, you get angry or you become more hostile. Okay, or as presumably, whatever. You go opposite what the bard wants you to go. That to me means that the bard has exposed their plan, right? They are transparent in what they're trying to do, so that makes you angry. Or I suppose they were trying to make you angry, it makes you happy instead. Yeah, I don't know. But to me, there's no subtlety there. I'd almost wish there was a separate price, because I think you're playing a bard, this kind of bard. To me, let me just put it this way. My takeaway, or at least my dream concept for a class like the bard, is subtle things. And part of that subtlety is you can kind of try to do stuff without getting caught. Now, I'm not saying you should never get caught and never have something really bad happen to you, but to me, it's about this subtleness that you're not bombastic with it. You're not the wizard who's throwing down a fireball, right? And you're wowing the room or frightening everybody. You're setting the world on fire, but you're sitting in the back of the bar, let's say, and you're strumming your lute. And you're able to do something a little magical that kind of goes under the radar a little bit. You don't really know what's going on. And sometimes when you have these things, in trying to balance it, to me, they've removed kind of the neat part of it, where it's just like, oh, you're singing. And like, yeah, maybe you're not affected by it, but you're not made angry. Maybe that would be if you did, I don't know, like maybe you roll a 20 on your save, and then you do, I would even have something, I'd rather be like, if you roll a 20, then you're aware of what the bard's trying to do, something else. But or having used, I don't know, spell slots. I don't know if I really love that, but you know what I mean. I would just like to have a class that's like, this is what you're trying to do. Yeah, influence. You're trying to be subtle. You're trying to do things on the down low. You're trying to use music in a way that people don't really recognize that you're trying to get them, but you do, because that's just kind of my thing. And unfortunately, I feel like these classes, they often kind of fall down a little bit, because like this bardic inspiration, there's no limit to what I can do it, but I have to been doing it for 3 rounds. So I got to be sitting there and I have to have either I got to be singing and playing the lute all the time, which was okay, but then you've totally taken any kind of stealth off the board, which is probably not going to be fine with the rest of the party, or you're most likely not going to get to use that much at all. Whereas why can't I be a war drummer and combat starts and I start beating the war drum, or the horn of Gondor? Like, why can't I do that? And why does it have to be this like pre thing? Why can't I do it in the moment? It gives me something to do. I don't know. Cargo says, I wonder when you'd ever want to choose make the reaction worse. Maybe in a third party's watching situation are worse than the enemy standing. Yeah, I'm not sure why you'd want to have it go. Why you want it to go hostile. Now, it's funny you say that because in my rules, my enchantment spell school, my magic school, what you're doing is if you get it all the way down to hostile, that's where you can start getting people to go. There are some different effects that unlock that only a enchanter can do, and some of them go like down past the negative. I forget what it is for hostile. I think it might be because you look at the confusion type spell, and the confusion type spell, you attack. One of the results is you just attack the nearest creature, and I think that kind of berserkness, that kind of uncontrolled rage, happens when you get down to the hostile. So if I'm going that route, in my thing, it's like, okay, you want to get them down hostile, and you get them so hostile that their minds are exploding with rage, and they no longer care who they're attacking as long as they're attacking somebody. And in fact, the other one I have in my system is that if you get them to neutral, you could actually spin off in another direction, and that's what gets them to kind of paralysis. It's like they're like so what's the word? They're just like analysis paralysis. They're like so like because in the middle of the reaction, one of the readings is kind of like they're confused, they're not sure, and that being confused just sort of pushes off to it's like, yeah, they're so confused they're just stuck, and so it's like you're holding them, right? It's like your whole person's like I'm putting so much stuff in your brain you don't even know what to think. And then on the positive side, that's where you get to kind of your classic charm. It's like you've gotten them so positive they're like off the charts positive. You get to charm. That's how I handled it. But yeah, I'm not sure in a kind of a classic D&D sense what going super negatory on the reaction would do for you. But I have to imagine it would do something. But I don't know. So then we got bards. Anything else cool? Anything else? Clerics. Okay, clerics existed before. Well, we do have different mythos. All right, so here I'll just do this and then I'll close it up for the week. So mythos. Clerics are generally aligned with either law or chaos. However, they may optionally choose to devote themselves to a specific deity, receiving major and minor access to that deity's spheres of influence, related powers, and weapon allowances. So the requirements are you have to devote yourself to a mythos, or devoting oneself to a mythos requires specific minimum ability scores and mandatory alignments. That's fine. I don't know about the ability scores, but all right. So the war mythos, neutral, got to be neutral. Got to have strength 13. I just want to see. So I guess you can use... Okay, so if you're the war mythos, you can use any weapons, any armor. You can incite a berserker rage. You can inspire fear, and then you have spheres of influence. What do the spheres of influence do? I think they really just copy pasting this out of the books. It says like, check the advanced complete priest handbook. It's like, okay, well, we're not in that world anymore. Does it say once only the mythos of the deity is provided? Right. Hold on. Devoting oneself. Okay. Major and minor access to that deity's spheres of influence. What do the spheres of influence do? Okay, they I see. Okay, so it's your spells. All right. Okay. I like the war mythos stuff. See, justice gets you hold person, inspire fear. Peace gets you charm or fascinate, some soothing words, laying on hands. Sun gets you some detect secret doors, infravision. Interesting. I wouldn't have picked that for the sun, but I'm guessing that's from the book. Laying on hands. Oh, those are the only ones. Okay, cool. And then I guess I'm turning it in. Cool. I may go into this more detail. I picked up the Land of Eam on the Black Friday sale. Didn't get a chance to do it this week. I think maybe on Monday we'll do some Land of Eam. So something to look forward to if you don't have Land of Eam. I've heard various things about it, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure. Obviously, it's a huge book. I'm not going to read all of it, but we'll try to pick and choose some stuff. Other than that, folks, thanks for hanging out with me this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.